A very warm good evening to everyone. I would like to welcome and thank you all for being here. And I would like to thank Ms. Paramita and Agents of Fish for having this panel discussion with SCM Sophia. I would like to introduce Ms. Paramita Vora. Sh- she's a lady who surely needs no introductions, but Ms. Paramita Vora is a filmmaker whose work explores feminism, love, and desire, urban life, and popular culture. Her work has been broadcast, taught, and displayed and showcased internationally. She is the founder and creative director of Agents of Ishq, India's best loved website about sex, love, and desire. AOI's exuberant and playful videos have created a new Indian language for talking about desire and sex in a pleasure positive and intersectional way. Her documentaries include the landmark films Unlimited Girls, Q2P, and Partners in Crime, among many others. She is the writer of the film Khamosh Pani, the comic Priya's Mirror, the play Ishkia, and a plethora of other things. I would request her to introduce the other panelists to her. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Are there space in front, in the middle also? It's exciting to see a room full of people, many of whom are friends. So since your friends squeeze in. Yeah. With consent. Yeah. Okay. So welcome everybody, and it's exciting to be here because it's SCM. I'm an ex-student of SCM, which was not told in the introduction, but I am. And it's also great to be doing this event in the studio because it's also in memory of Seher Latif that in memory of Seher Latif, the studio was refurbished. So it's a special evening, and of course, because of the topic and the people who are here, I think it's a great way to come back to in-person events, at least for us. SEM is a course that was created more than 50 years ago to put more women in the media, and we know that it has. Like, it has reshaped Indian media by putting some amazing women out there. And many of us were, of course, inspired by the presence of women like Shanta and Dolly, whom we saw everywhere we went. And actually, that's my that's actually what I would say in introduction to all the panelists, that, well, I will read their bios, but I will also say that the bio of everybody is that you saw them everywhere you went. You saw them at plays, you saw them at movies, you saw them at readings, and that's how you felt like this is a thing that can be done. I can also be the kind of person who spends all my time going to these things and being part of this world, right? So thanks to them. who mainly, when I saw him at events, I would try to hide so that he doesn't torture me in public. But yeah. so I'm going to introduce in order of seating. Shanta Gokhale is a Mumbai-based bilingual writer, translator, theatre critic, and cultural columnist, but of course, most beloved cultural figure, one of our most beloved cultural figures. Yeah, she has written 2 award-winning novels, a critical history of Marathi drama, edited 3 books on theatre, and won the Sangeet Natak Academy Award in 2016, amongst many other awards. But I think we know her as somebody who has partnered with, collaborated with many different artists, and worked in many different art forms, which is in itself an inspiration. Dolly Thakur is a veteran actor, newscaster, columnist, and casting director who has worked in advertising, communications, and public relations. She's also a staunch social activist, particularly for children and destitute women and for Citizens for Peace. Her favorite assignments, amongst the hundreds she has no doubt done, include being, if you read a book, you know that she has done hundreds, include being the casting director for the Oscar-winning film Gandhi, the national coordinator for the Ladli Awards for Gender Sensitivity, of which we have one a couple at Agents of Ishq, we're proud to say, and for performing on stage in the still running Vagina Monologues. And she has recently published her book, Regrets None, which is an autobiography. If you all, I mean, I guess you all know that Shanta published her memoirs earlier, and it's called With One Foot on the Ground. If you don't know, you should immediately order the book. You can get it in Kindle or you can buy the actual book. Jerry Pinto is the person of whom there are many pictures on the wall outside, about which all feminists can query him later at the dinner. In fact, when I put up the poster for the event, everybody was like, Jerry Pinto is a grown-ass woman. And we were like, that's what he wants to be when he grows up, we said. Jerry Pinto, but he's also a poet, editor, and novelist based in Mumbai. He worked with Leela Naidu on her memoir, Leela, A Patchwork Life. He has written an account of the career of the actor Helen Award. He has also translated the memoirs of the actor Vandana Mishra, the poet Malika Amar Sheikh, and has edited for SCM to 5 volumes on the lives of women, the first of which happened to feature both Shanta and Dolly. And of course, he is a writer of M and the Big Whom, which many, many, many people love so much. Strangely, many people love Jerry also so much, but that makes you feel hopeful, Jerry. So to begin, I actually have a question for both Shanta and Dolly, and maybe you can answer one by one. And the question is that, did you feel through your life as you were growing up, and even when you were full grown up and growing older, that you were unusual compared to other people? Or did you feel that you were unusual in some ways, but quite usual in other ways? Like, what was your experience of yourself vis-a-vis the rest of us?
Okay, one of the things that you forgot to mention about Jerry, he interviewed me on All India Radio and in great detail. And that was, in fact, a very exhilarating experience for me also, because Jerry had done so much homework, some of the things even I didn't know. And all right, right from childhood, I have thought myself special. I had a grandmother who worked. I had an aunt who worked, and she was a teacher. And because she was a teacher, when you're in school, you know, a student's relative being a teacher is very special. So I used to walk around with my chest out like that, because my aunt was a teacher and she was a loved teacher, very revered. And so, and then my father was in the Air Force. Now, the services at that time were, again, very revered, and there was no distinction of color, class, food, religion, language, belief, faith, anything like that. So it gave you so much confidence to be just you. And I grew up in that environment till the age of 15, 16 or whatever. It was only when I came to Delhi that I realized that there are discriminations of, oh, we left our property in Pakistan and we've now come here, and therefore the whole of Sujan Singh Park was reclaimed by all these people who we all know and who are very, very wealthy today. But, you know, I mean, and it somehow wealth became the big thing. Till then, money didn't matter at all. It was who you were, what you did, what you stood for. You know, I mean, it was a very happy childhood. Since then, of course, there have been lots of discriminations, lots of prejudices. But so I have grown up with that, and that's the most important age. So I've grown up thinking no end of myself always.
Friends, opposite. I call myself a mouse, but from practically when I was 5, I was a mouse who could read. And because I could read, I read and read. So that was unusual, because in my class, yes, people read those little mysteries, you know, yeah, those, and they chewed their fingernails over it. And I couldn't bring myself to say to them that I was reading Arabian Nights and learning all about your business. So no, I wasn't unusual. My parents were. And because they were, I think I had an unusual life. Because in those days, Shivaji Park, Marathi mulgi, middle class. But we were out playing games. We were out traveling. We were always dressed right for the games we played. Example, shorts. So it was all seen as something unusual. But in my own self, I was usual, very usual.
I mean, as you said this, I was thinking about how I've also heard these stories about my aunts when they were in Lahore, where they left their property, but didn't get any in Sujan Singh Park, unfortunately for me. But this Vora Saab ki betiyan badminton khelti hain. This was this like, and I was thinking, oh wow, that's so glamorous. But in a way, I mean, we would see glimpses of such women in movies, right? Like we would see girls wearing skirts and playing tennis and calling their father daddy, and so we had that glimpse of that, but we always thought of it as something glamorous. And as you're saying, for yourselves it was just normal, but as you went through life, did you start, not only because of all these things, but did you start to feel that actually you are a bit different from most people, but you just don't have a language for it? And in what ways would that, come to you as you are going through your adult life?
One develops a complex when, I think, when you reach marriageable age, because suddenly in the society that I was being brought up, these foreign service directories were being brought out. And in that, the lady of the house or the mother of the person who was one of my best friends would mark out Maharashtrian, not Maharashtrian, in those days Maharashtrians were not even known. But they had, but the castes and the brahmachatris and all those were being marked out, and all those that were in the railways were the Christians, and I was a Christian, so that was marked out for me, and that something gave you a great complex. It did give you a complex, because and yet I didn't have a single Christian friend, even though I was brought up in convents. I mean, like that, you knew girls, but no one, once I joined college and things, I had no Christian friends. I had Parsi friends, and Jaru will bear me out. Parsis think no end of themselves. So I began to think no end of myself, because Parsi friends too. And, so I think I've led my life by the associations I made, by the people I associated with. Fortunately, I was also very fond of reading, but it didn't come from a family that encouraged that. They wanted you to. So I didn't come from a background. milieu. And but as I said, and thank God none of us were religious. So there was no such thing as you have to go to church or you have to go to the mosque or you have to go to a temple or anything. We had none of the pressures of that ever. I've never had that all my life. But because I came from or my parents were Christian, as it were, we observed Christmas. And the entire camp used to come to our house for Christmas to eat that Christmas cake and the gunjias and the pakwan and all that. But, you know, there was no discrimination as such about religion, faith, ceremonies, anything like that. And so I think I've really had the best of India at a time when India was large-hearted, generous, able to envelop everybody. And then even the jobs that I took up, and I'm so glad to recognize Sunaina, who was with me in Doordarshan when I started working for television. And then I have Nishchint, who also was in Doordarshan time, and young Samira. Samira's mother and I were in college together. And she does, and Rasho, her mother remains one of my closest friends even today. And then as I grew older, I made friends like Shanta and friends like Kalpana. I mean, it's amazing the number of people that I see in the room that are all achievers, have all done things. And we're even amongst the younger lot, I've got Saloni sitting over here. I've got Jabeen, who I love very much, and Jaru, who again has grown up quite, you know, she was a little younger, but she was there. And, you know, so it's wonderful to see a room full of people who were all doers, who have achieved so much. And today, of course, the world is open for the young girl. So there is so much that you can do. But for God's sake, give up narrow-mindedness, give up those kind of values. And the world is at your feet after that.
So what was the question? No, one moment. Wait. No. Okay. No, I'll take off from something she said. All about no caste, no creed. No. Okay. That was my first lesson, that yes, there is caste. And it was a lesson that I learned when I was 7 years old and we were playing hopscotch on the street. And one of the girls said to me, because she lost and I was still winning, sorry to say. So she was saying to the girl standing next to her, Bhatuldi. So I said, okay, that doesn't sound like a compliment. So I asked my mother, what is Bhatuldi? So my mother said, that is what people who are not Brahmins call Brahmins. And it's a derogatory term. So I said, oh, then why did she call me that? She said, Beta, we are Brahmins. And they know it. You may not, but they know it. So that's how caste was brought home to me. But luckily, the school I went to was totally secular. We had Sindhis and Parsis and everyone else. So it didn't ever get in the way. And as far as upbringing is concerned, and chopping vegetables, etc., no, we weren't expected to do that. And we weren't expected even to get married. Yeah, like my father said to me, why do you want to teach at a university? You'll have a lovely life, you know. Don't get into it if you don't want to. And then, of course, as a joke, he would say, Shanda, come here quick. What does that man look like to you? Good now. Huh? And he is blowing the horn so that you will notice him. Now, now please notice him. He has a shop of stainless steel vessels. So when you set up home, you'll have all your pots. So anyway, we were told very categorically, whatever money I have, I should spend on your education. Don't expect me to run around looking for grooms for you. Go out, find your own, and it will be a simple wedding. No giving, no taking. That was when I was 16. So that's how I do.
I guess you wish you'd listen to your dad. At least reading the book makes me think that sometimes. I was also thinking when Dolly was saying that she didn't like to cook, that she threw a lot of.
Tell the mother's story. What your mother wrote to you. Oh my God, that's
He knows us better. Yeah. Yes, yes. See, my mother grew up as a motherless child in a joint family. So, and she was very useful to her father in his factory work. She would keep the accounts. Nobody was looking for a match for her. And yet people would say, because she lived in a small place called Dahan, and when is she married? When is she getting married? Finally, she got fed up. She also wanted a home of her own. So she started looking up ads in marriage ads in magazines. And she came across this Gigi Gokhale person, and who the first line was caste no bar. So she said, yippee, I'm going to write to this fellow. So she wrote to him, and my father, I think, was quite impressed by her letter. So he wrote back and she wrote back and he wrote back, etc. And mother would have loved me to read all those letters, but they got blown away in some storm. So anyway, at the end, the last letter she wrote to him was, look, he was in Patna, journalist. She was in Dhaka. And she said, we haven't met. We will meet, of course. But there's a lovely proverb in Marathi, which I shall translate. It says, this carrot is a pipe. If it plays, it plays. If it doesn't, we'll break it up and eat it. So if my father had even a shred of doubt remaining, he said, this is the woman.
that story.
I know which story you meant. I know which story you meant.
Very
you were-
quickly, Shanta was in a marriage and sitting in some godforsaken. Sorry. Sitting in some godforsaken town and doing nothing much with her life, and her mother wrote to her, "Is this why we educated you, sent you to England? Come back here immediately," and said, "Get to work." I so love that mother. Meaning, seriously, we need clones.
Actually, one of the things is some people called up to ask, why are you all doing this event? And I said, well, one thing is that 3 people gave me Dolly's book for my birthday. So, and actually 2 people gave me Shanta's book for my earlier birthday. So, I guess it was meant to be that I had to read these books, and the books brought back my reading habit. And then I was thinking about why did they do that? And it's actually because what is a book meant to be? Like, is it meant to win a Booker Prize? Is that its only job in the world? Or is it something that we read and think about our own lives through? And I really felt that while reading the books, like it was a way of reading about a life, but also thinking about my life and finding unbelievable connections between people who had been young a very long time ago. So I think, like, for me, it became something. I became evangelistic and I kept giving the books to other people. And I felt like, oh, we need more of this. We need lots. Now I've only been reading memoirs since then, by the way, which brings me to my question to Jerry, which is that, like in both Shanta's and Dolly's book, there is a kind of ambivalence that I should write this book, but well, what's the big deal? I mean, it's too much trouble now. Is it worth doing this thing? But Jerry is, of course, a world famous nagger and nagged. I mean, I have successfully not been nagged by him, but but Shanta. I mean, he can tell you how he nagged Shanta. But why did you? And why is it so important to you that women's lives be written by you, translating so many?
Before we jump to Jerry, there is one little thing that I'd like to say. I've said that, I was not approved by my mother and the kind of things that I did because I was never one to be in the kitchen. But you won't believe it. Very recently, I was going through cleaning cupboards. My mother died in 2003. And so I went there to pack up. And you won't believe it, I found notebooks and all the speeches that I had given in school. And she had listed all of those. All the debates I took part in, all the elocution, all the plays I'd acted in. And she'd made a list of all that. And I have all those in my collection today. But this is something that, we think that mothers don't care. But I mean, that really but she wasn't here for me to hug her and tell her what I thought of her. But I can't tell you how touched I was with that. Jerry, all yours.
I told you, I'm here as a fanboy. I think very highly of the work of all the 3 women who are on the stage here. I think Paro's work in Agents, which someone said it's India's best loved website on sex. I think there are lots of websites we love on sex. Okay, but this is the one that actually treats sex as something human and something valuable and something precious. So that's really, really important work today. Shanta, meaning, I mean, if there were national treasures, Shanta would be a national treasure. You'd have a little guard next to her taking her about and stuff like that. And Dolly, of course, I mean, Dolly is to me, Sakshi. She is the one person who has been at every single theatre performance in Bombay in 4 languages. And that's Sakshi, that being there for the time when, Rehan engineer stands up and gives an impromptu speech of 7 minutes. And there are 3 people in the audience, 2 leave, but Dolly waits to the end. I think these are very important things. But why do I nag? Why do I persistently ask Kalpana Sharma, for instance, to start working on her autobiography? It is because, to one very simple reason, okay? We have such a disgustingly skewed view of the universe because we don't have women's histories. We don't have, yeah? Sanjukta, I hope you're keeping notes. No, seriously. Are you keeping notes? You can even keep notes on your phone. You can dance your life. Yeah, but your life also. Yeah, but okay. Saloni, everybody. Okay, see, when I tell a man, you should write your autobiography, they say, here is the copy. Please publish. They have worked on it already. They are sure. They are important. What is there to doubt? मेरे पास penis है. Penis के होने, I mean, if I have a dick, then that dick will write it for me. End of story. Huh?
And it usually does.
It usually does also. Yeah, dick wipes and dick rights. Okay, straightforwardly. Women, on the other hand, you will talk to a woman who has just told you that she's worked with, the leprosy bacillus for 20 years. This was yesterday, last evening. She's worked with the leprosy bacillus for 20 years. She met Cheshire of Cheshire Old Age Home, and when he was in a tent, okay, and she worked with him on Saturdays and Sundays. She tells me these fabulous stories of her life. And then when I say, you should write this down, she says, yeah, but what is there in my life that is interesting? And you think, the enemy has an outpost in your head. Patriarchy has set up an outpost in your head and is telling you your life is of no importance. That is the reason. There is no other reason. Otherwise, like every single one of you, every single one of us, yeah, is unique. We have a story. That story is worth telling because every story is worth telling. Every story, right? So I choose people whom I think would be able to deliver a good story. I choose people whom I think would be able to tell it well. I choose people whom I think you should do this because we'd all love to read this stuff, right? But I'm saying it to everyone in this room. We all need to own our stories. We need to tell them. You don't give a freaking hoot who's going to read it. Don't. Diana Athill, age 90, sits down to write Stet. It's a small, brief book, an account of her life as an editor. Okay, who'd think an editor's life would go straight to the top of the charts of the Times in London and sell millions of copies? Who'd think that from age 90 to age 99, she will do 12 other books about her life? Brilliant books about her sex life as a 90-year-old. Hey, why should you not tell that story? Tell that story. We need it if we are to correct the imbalance in our storytelling universe. And when there is an imbalance in the storytelling universe, there is an imbalance in society and in our souls. It burrows right down to there because our souls are stories at base. And if we have only men telling men's stories, we have dick wipes as souls. It's really as fundamental as that. Keep notes about your life.
So one thing I wanted to say. Actually, I do agree that with Jerry that women should tell it. Actually, I just agree that we should listen to more women's stories. And that's what I wanted to also ask you about. That in a sense, you've also listened to women's stories, right? And what has that meant for you? How has it changed you?
Okay, I actually believe we are just smeared walls. Okay, there's nothing but smear. So in some ways, you consider yourself a self, right? Like this is a unitary self and I'm taking it around and I'm speaking so well on stage and look at my nice kurta and I matched this nicely. Shanta gave me this kurta, by the way. I gave Shanta that sari. Isn't that cute? Okay, but in this moment then, there's a bit of me in Shanta and there's a bit of Shanta in me. Okay, so that's literally, you cannot do anything without being changed by the doing of it. To sit with Leela Naidu in the morning, and Leela was a wonderful storyteller, but she was impossible to pin to a page because she acted everything. So she would say, and then Dom and I come to the customs officer. And suddenly Leela is becoming the customs officer. And she's looking at us. And she's looking, and I'm thinking, bitch, how do I write this down? I loved her, but I'm just thinking, how do I get this moment of like full on, because a good storyteller is not just using words. They are using accent and intonation, they are using everything. And at times I wanted to say, Leela, tell the whole thing. Darling, Puttu said, who is Puttu? No one gives, okay, so, but even Chiradeep, who's here, came to shoot. I said, Leela, we have all these pictures of you as a young person. We want a current picture. So she said, of course, darling, we must have a picture. Who's doing my hair and makeup? I said, we'll take a picture, Baba. No, we have to have hair and makeup. I went out looking for hair and makeup. Luckily, I found one sweet gay Parsi boy who loved Leela Naidu. And so he gave me a concession. He took only 20,000 to do her hair and makeup. Thank you very much. He touched her hair here. He touched her nose here, done. Then Chiro took a picture and she looked at it and said, NG. I do not have a dewlap. I was thinking, no love, you do. Okay, but I won't say what I was going to say. The joy of all this was in the interaction, in the simple human interaction of sitting with somebody, chatting to them. That was Leela. And for Helen, for me, my God, Helen. Every time that I wanted to, I got bored of like writing, because you often get bored of writing. It's very much like a marriage. You love the thing that you're doing. You love the person, but sometimes it's just like, what is this shit going on? So I would put on Mungada Mungada, my Gudki Dali. I would dance madly. I would wiggle my shit. Like I would give my booty a big shake and I'd come down and sit down and say, thank you, Helen. Let's do this book. Okay. I showed Paramita the first draft. Paramita said, there's one paragraph on page 30. That's very nice. Thank you, Paro. I love you, Paro.
But he paid for lunch still.
Yeah, I did. And so I look at this woman. Yeah, in general, your average actress lasts for 5 years. Rakhi, for instance, she starts as Amitabh's, married sister, like she's his sister-in-law. She becomes his girlfriend, then she plays his mother in Shakti. Helen danced with Prithviraj Kapoor. Helen danced with Raj Kapoor. Raj Kapoor comes close to Raj Kapoor. He says, "Ui ma," and he runs away, terrified of this errant sexuality. And then she dances with Rishi Kapoor. She survives 3 generations. And then Mohabbat, but she's not like wiggling her thing there, just like a little, And then she's also become an icon. So how not to write about this, right? Malika Amar Sheikh, an inside view of history. I was fascinated by Amar Sheikh. He had the great revolutionary singer. So they said he sang and his hands reached out and one touched the heart of Prabha Devi and the other touched the heart of Parekh. His daughter, Namdev Dhasal's wife, like Black Panthers, happening in front of her. Dalit Panthers happening, in front of her. The whole story there, but from another view, from another perspective, a cold, clear-eyed perspective. Vandana Mishra, Konkani babe, 14 years old, dances, ends up on the Marwadi theatre stage, on Bhangwadi, sitting on jhulas and waving to the audience because she's died. And the Marwadi women saying, please wear my jewels when you go to heaven. Because my jewels at least will get to heaven, I won't. I mean, these are such rich, lively, wonderful stories. So really, Paro, it never was about them being women. It was about the richness of the story that I was encountering. That they were women was wonderful, but it was to me secondary. It was the story in its richness, its textures, velvet and brick. Those were what I wanted. Those were what I wanted to deal with. Right? It's always going to be the story.
Since I also read some memoirs of men in the lockdown, I totally agree, because like there were some men, they wrote perfectly nice and they had very exciting lives, but by the 16th time they told you they were the 16th descendant of somebody or other, you're like, I got it in chapter 1, like, can we move on? Whereas definitely with the women's memoirs, there are so many stories, there are so many people, there are so many friendships, there are so many relationships, that it is a more exciting story, in the sense that it felt like women cared more about life and men cared more about status. And so you got more by reading the women's story. But of course, these are broad generalizations, because you can also see Ramachandra's memoir and it's almost as exciting as a woman's. So I think now is a good time for us to just hear a little bit. So I'm going to ask my colleague Anshuman to read a bit from Shanta's memoir, and then ask Dolly to read a bit from hers, and then ask for another question. So Anshuman.
These were days of pleasure mixed with pain. We were in the constant company of VF, Viju's exact opposite in every respect, a responsible, unaddicted family man. And the inevitable was inevitably happening. A feeling was growing between us that could neither be denied nor accepted. I was confused and upset with myself. I knew VF was in love with the wife of another friend of his in Chennai. Was he a wife snatcher then? I had met her in Bombay and knew of their relationship. He was only waiting for her to divorce her husband before they were married. Then what were these signals he was sending out to me? I wanted none of it. I wanted out. Life was complicated enough without having an extramarital affair, extramarital relationship thrown in. So I would deliberately ask him about the woman in Chennai. He would say she was fine, met her last month. So is the divorce coming through? I would ask. Soon, soon, he would say, and reach out for my hand. And I would give it to him. My feminist self looked on aghast. But the other self seemed not to care. Vijay was oblivious to what was happening, or pretending to be. He didn't want to challenge either VF or me. Emotional complications were not his cup of tea. Years later, I would look back and feel deep compassion for him in a situation he had never bargained for when marrying me. All he had ever wanted in life was to be allowed to do his job, which he did exceptionally well: drink, play cards, and read. That was not asking for much, but it was married. Later in Bombay, I saw VF in perspective. He had wanted to marry, whether it was the woman from Chennai or me, whichever was free to do first. But I had no intention of divorcing Biju. Even if I did, had I not had enough of marriage already? Did I not want only to work and look after my children now? And see theater and dance, hear music and watch films. The Indian New Wave cinema was burgeoning then. Translate and write. Did I also not know that if I ever did divorce Viju and marry again, perish the thought, VF would not be the man for me. With all his virtues, there was one he lacked, which overrode many for me: a sense of humor. I could live a Spartan life with 2 meals a day and 4 saris to wear, but I could not live a life without laughter.
Thanks, Anshul. And actually, before I asked Rory to read, I wanted to ask a question. So, so Shanta I have been trying to get Shanta to write something in Agents of Fish for long. And then whenever Shanta would meet me, when I used to write a column on love in the paper, she'd be like, you and your blessed love. And you keep writing about this. So I was like, Shanta has left it to me to choose a passage in the book. I'm going to choose a romantic one. but for a reason. First of all, it's a relief, right? Because we never get to read about women's intimate lives from their point of view. Like, we are always either reading it in a stereotypical way in a popular book, a scandal, something that happened to somebody else, but not something that happened to me and that I'm feeling it. So it's a relief to read this. It's a relief to read it in all the different ways. It's very different in Dolly's book. It's very different in Shanta's book because they're different people. But there were two questions that were in my mind from reading this section. One is that, you said this thing, my feminist self looked on aghast. And I wondered about that. Like, that happens to all of us so often. And we don't get to talk about that either. Like, we do want to be a certain way, but we're also people. And sometimes we want things that are in contradiction to the things we think we ought to want. That happens to us vis-a-vis tradition, but it also happens to us vis-a-vis feminism or being a progressive person. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about that. And also overall in the book, what I find amazing, and it's also in Dolly's book, but we'll come to that when Dolly reads the part, is the ability to forgive or to at least make some sort of peace with people who've hurt you, like men and relationships which have been hurtful, or because you're saying this thing in a very casual way that he was just waiting for one of us to be free, he would marry either. But in a sense, it contains an entire emotional world of how men don't always look at women with a particularity. So even when you said that line that, well, it's not okay if you were married, or at least married to me, and there's a meanness that is not looked at somewhere. So that really seeps through in that passage. And I was wondering if you could talk about how you negotiated those journeys about feminism, but also the journeys with betrayal or hurt for yourself.
Actually, I have asked myself this question for Yeah, I'm 82. I started asking myself at age 16. So please calculate. Whatever. But for decades, the way I've been brought up, the kind of freedom I was given, the kind of books I have read, the kinds of thinking I have done. Where is this, the feeling for finding a mate? It's simple, it's basic. At one point, I told myself, we are animals also. We want to mate. On what terms? Because we are evolved and sophisticated, on what terms can be decided. But basically, a woman wants a man, or a man wants a man, or a woman wants a woman, whatever. So when I decided to marry, I was not in love with love. I was in love with this man. He was a gorgeous, not gorgeous looking, though he was fair. And he had light eyes, but not good looking. I just loved his joie de vivre. And of course, the fact that he read, naval officer reading, that was what he was most famous for. Oh, Shade, the man who reads. Yes. Took me a long while to realize that reading was like fidgeting for him. That he could unwrap a parcel and start reading the wrapper. So, whereas you think that reading keeps changing people, as it had changed me, but that wasn't happening. So when you talk about forgiveness, I had nothing to forgive. I hurt him. He didn't hurt me. I was the one who decided that this marriage wasn't for me. As Jerry says, also encouraged partly by my mother. So this second time I had hurt someone. The first was my Norwegian boyfriend back in Bristol. So when I married again, I knew what it was like being at the other end. And forgiveness followed. I mean, we do it to each other. It's sad, it's tragic, but at least I wanted to save what had been precious in the relationship. And there had been many precious things. Otherwise, I wouldn't have married. There was no compulsion. So forgiveness is a noble term to use. I wouldn't call it that. Yes. And the fact that, you've spent 9 years, 10 years, 20 years with a person. How? Because you cared. Certain things didn't work out. That's okay. So it wasn't forgiveness. It was just saving for myself those precious things that I had once had. I answered your question. Yeah.
It's very interesting and important at this particular moment to be reading these accounts and hearing these things, because we're also living in a time where we are talking so much about trauma and hurt, and it's very difficult for people to define themselves as more than the sum total of their trauma, because there's not much language available to us to say that, yeah, I was hurt or I hurt somebody and I have to figure that out, and it takes a while to figure it out, but that's not the only thing I am. And so everything about me is not destroyed or crushed because I was hurt or betrayed or something good didn't happen. So I think it's very valuable when we are reading these stories to see. And sometimes it felt to me like that's what's feminist about the stories, whether we put that name to it or we don't put the name to it. But the idea that it's always an imperfect journey, the journey to be somebody more than people tell you can be. Right? But I also saw, and like in Dolly, in your book, it's very different. Like your book is very saturated with romance. And I found it amazing. Like when I started reading the book, well, you can go to my Instagram and check, but I kept putting screenshots up, right? And I'm like, but this book is like reading Star Comics or, one of those romance books in the beginning, because you remember everything so well. And I was wondering if you'd read one section from your teenage class. Yes. Well, guess. Yes. The mosquito net. The mosquito net. Machhardani.
I have always craved love for as long as I can remember, and not always successfully, but I'm still craving for it. What of the other one then, the dark one? That is me. I grew up. Suddenly, it was the summer of 1957. A letter arrived from Bobby Johnson, who used to be a cadet in Kanpur, in Hyderabad, when we were all 11 and 12 years old. He'd earned his wings and would be passing through Kanpur en route to Calcutta. Now, my father was posted in Kanpur. We'd come down from Hyderabad. Rani Auntie agreed to take Esme and me to the station to meet him and wave him through on his journey as if he were a war hero. I wore my smartly tailored Peter Pan collar dress. Nothing would accentuate my 26-inch bust line and my 18-inch waist quite as well. On a crackling hot summer day, we rickshawed to the station 12 miles from the camp through dust endemic to Kanpur that hovered like a cataract. I still remember that date. It was the 2nd of July. We waited on the platform. It was one of those afternoons that mark adolescence, a waking dream burning with secret fever, waiting for someone we hadn't seen in years, a glow in the knowledge that I'd had a childhood crush on him. Of course, that made it even easy to forget. I was 13 years and 3 months old. The train pulled in. Bobby took one look at us and decided that he would break his journey for the night and continue the next day.
Go, Bobby!
And so we made the 12-mile trek back to Chakeri. Bobby and I in one rickshaw, Esme and Rani Auntie in the other. We held hands and sat glued to each other. And nothing unusual in that. The seats were 30 inches apart. When the rickshaw pulled up at the house, squeals of surprise and delight rang out. Bobby was grabbed, pulled, hugged, pushed, pinched, and passed from family member to family member like he was a special present. His unexpected arrival had upset the sleeping arrangements. The officers' quarters in Chakeri were essentially a line of 8 rooms, all leading to a common veranda. A wall divided the 8 rooms into 2 residences of 4 rooms each, 2 bedrooms and a dining room and a living room. One of the bedrooms was for our parents and one for the 4 of us. Each allowed for a degree of privacy. We had one extra guest that night, Rani Auntie and Bobby. And since Bobby was the chief guest that evening, he got the bed in the center of the room, the one that Esme and I normally shared. By and by, the others fell asleep. Bobby inched towards my side of the bed. We held hands, and they must have been slick with sweat. We didn't care. Our fingers intertwined, and we conversed all night in fervent whispers. God knows what we talked about. It must have felt incredible, adult and epic, and deeply personal. I doubt I heard much of it. My heart beat loudly with his hand in mine, skin on skin. The blood coursed through my ears like never before. At some point, he leaned over and we kissed. My first kiss, proper, romantic, intended, not play. I loved him then, immediately and forever. He had my heart. Dawn crept up on us. In that light, everything was different. I wasn't a little girl anymore. Time changes when you're in love. Each moment stretches out like an eternity. And when you add up those moments, they are gone in a blink of an eye. Years passed, and everything remains that fantastic clarity. Every minute, every smell, every color, like today is the day after. Dawn came, became mid-morning, and when it was time for Bobby to leave, as luck would have it, I went to bathe when Bobby walked into the dressing room to pack for his departure. We snatched a few more kisses and tight hugs, precious and life-changing. I was 13 and he was 26. It was a brand new day, and it was also the end of the world. I still remember Bobby on the 10th of November every year, his birthday.
I mean, Dolly, you remember this in so much detail. It does feel like it happened yesterday, even when we read it, and even now when you read it. But of course, when we look at it through the lens of things today, what do you feel about moments of this kind in your life?
You know, I've loved intensely with the 3 relationships or 4 relationships that I'm very proud of. And they haven't been successful, but they are very important in my life. And they taught me so much. They've made me grow. And I still remember them. And I'm friends with each one of them. That is what is so beautiful. That it certainly it caused you pain, it made you sad at that time, but one didn't divorce from it completely. And I still write to them, I still hear from them, I still get phone calls. So, you know, I think it's just made me richer and a better person.
There have also been a lot of hurts, no? You write about
yeah,
that.
as I said, the hurt was there at the time. Except for Bobby, who hurt me very much at that time, because he then got married to somebody who was a good 6 years older than me, who failed 3 times in her metric exam, etc. So I felt very better than her. So, you know, but it broke my heart, and it took me 7 years or 8 years to then get attracted to anybody else. I had lots of young boys from school and the co-education. It being the Air Force, there were also young pilots, etc. But I wasn't enamored or attracted to any one of them. So it took me 7 to 8 years to get over Bobby. And to think I was 13 at that time, you know, but that was a very important relationship in my life. And I've never met him again. After in fact, I got a 2nd division in my senior Cambridge because he'd got married.
I mean, Dolly's life is marked by romances and report cards. How many marks I got in which exam? You still remember that?
And
Better than her.
yeah. So, you know, but it's been like that throughout my life. And as I said, when I give of myself, I give of myself 100%. And then when they withdraw, I don't withdraw, they withdraw. I've never given up anybody. People have given me up. Maybe I come on too intensely, whatever it is. But
Yeah, Bobby was a. I
I'm
wanted
not
to say
calling
spoiler.
him.
Bobby was a cad. Yeah.
See, my friends know them better than I do.
And the readers. I mean,
And
I
the
don't know them,
readers.
but I read the book. I was like, this person's a cat. This person's a cat. This one is also a cat.
No, and I know that Jaru bears me out of that also. No, so but the point is that I never gave them up. They gave me up for whatever reasons. Maybe I come on too strong. Maybe but I don't, because I never demanded anything from anyone. I never demanded money. I never demanded property. I never demanded name. I didn't even demand marriage. Forget about other things. But yet, they're the ones who slipped away. And it did cause a lot of pain. I'm not saying that it didn't cause pain. But I'm not sitting here drinking myself silly or smoking myself to death. I'm okay.
I think, again, what is so amazing about the stories you tell about being hurt, about your breakups, is that, again, women don't much talk about those experiences because there's a sense of shame in being left for people. There's a sense of, I mean, we don't even have any movies with women with heartbreaks in them. Like after Meena Kumari, that thing is not there. So it's always guys who have heartbreaks, and then we are watching them. And if women break up, they feel either they must, like, they have to prove that the man was so horrible that this terrible thing has happened to them, then it's all right and people will sympathize. Or otherwise, they feel people will be like, oh, you're desperate. You were too much. You're saying it yourself. Maybe I was too intense. But, so that thing. So when you were writing, what did it feel like actually to write about those experiences? One thing to have them and to come through them. But did you fear that when you wrote about those things, people would think some way about it?
No, in fact, what I had in mind when I was writing was to give other women, other young women, courage that it's not the end of the world if things don't go your way. And these are very natural responses that one has. The instincts, they're there. So don't think just because you've had an ex-boyfriend or an ex-husband or a divorce that it's the end of the world. He's not going to look after you. It's your life. You have to go ahead. And that is why I never cried on anybody's shoulder. I cried on Chandras' shoulder. But, it wasn't as if I was looking for a crutch or waiting for somebody to help. But I didn't hide my stories. Everybody knew about it. And I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of the woman I am and of the relationships I've had and the people that I've known in my life. And I have some super friends, and friends are the ones that make my life what it is.
It's amazing. Actually, the friendships and all of the honesty and the self-awareness of both Shanta's book and Dolly's book are uncommon. We don't encounter them very often. So I really urge everyone to get the books and read them. I mean, we're running out of time, but so I have to skip some of the questions I wanted to ask. And I wish that I could have like 3 hours to talk to each of the people on this panel, actually, but there are different kinds of greed. The greed to have everybody there and the greed to have the 3 hours also. So I went with one kind of greed. And another greed, maybe another day. But having written these books, which I mean, Shanta was ambivalent about, and Dolly, perhaps you wanted to write, but it was like a very big exercise because you felt it's scattered, it's a lot of things. How do you feel about it now that you've written it and people are reading it?
Paramita, I had no hurdles at all. When I decided that I wanted to write, it just poured itself out. And I wrote, I had no hang-ups about anything because I wasn't going to hide anything. There was nothing that I was covering up. I wrote everything. It would have been a 1,000-page book if I'd let everything out. But so it needed to be edited. It needed to be, but I didn't want to do it. So the people that helped me with it, they knew me well enough and they knew what to put in and what. I mean, there's nothing that they've taken out. If you read the book, everything that I have wanted is in the book.
Actually, it's an amazing job done by our book.
And I must say that I wrote this book for my son, Kwasar. because I wanted him to know what his mother was. And I hope that he believes that it's an honest story.
But how have people responded, and what do you feel about the fact that the workbook is out?
Oh, I've had very positive responses from a lot of people. And I love the fact that it has been received well, and that all of you will get to read it and get some courage from it. The one person that I was scared about, because I still adore her, and she is the very epitome of English literature, etc., is Nisha Dukuna. I don't mind mentioning the name. And Nisha was the first woman who rang me up 4 times while reading the book and telling me how much she loved it. And that was the greatest compliment that I could be paid.
Yeah, I was, the way I wrote this book was a cop-out. And it was saying to Jerry, actually, okay, you asked for it, but is this what you had asked for? And I remained unhappy about writing it till I got this idea of writing it through events of the body. So that put a necessary distance between Mimi and Mimi. And as I kept telling myself, oh, if they think I didn't have breast cancer, here are reports to show it. You can't verify things of the emotions. Anyone can say, oh, that's her side of the story. What about his or theirs? So for me, it was very important to be totally objective about what I was writing. I must say I had a ball writing it. And I did think that if I had a ball writing it, people might have a ball reading it. So basically it was that. I wasn't trying really to inspire or anything like in our culture, when you have white hair, people have a tendency to sit at your feet and say, kuch bataiye. And I want to sing through the chair when that happens. So I wasn't out to inspire, but one story I have to tell of quite a few that I heard from readers. And this is from a young person I didn't know who called me up and said, can I visit? And she came over, and she's working in Amsterdam. She said a friend of hers had got into a sweat because a project, her professor had asked her to do a project on menopause. And she didn't know where to begin or how to go about it. And this girl who visited had read my book. So she passed it on. And the other friend apparently burst into tears and said, now I have it, I know how to go about it. And she did her project on menopause. So, you know, a few stories like that have made me feel good. Thank you, Jerry.
I just want to say that, you know, it's a very, very Shanta book, and therefore it's gorgeous. Like it's like, you know, prepping yourself for a hazelnut creme, and, you know, just like focusing on hazelnut creme with the marron glacé base. And arriving there and finding that it is a lime sorbet with a tight cutting edge of peel on the top. And once you have got over your problem with your marron glacé, which has been in your head, you settle down to the lime sorbet and eat it with great delight. But it is still my contention that someone has to write the book on Shanta's contribution to our cultural life. Because there has not been a single person I know who hasn't come and sat at those feet and asked, Bataiye na, but not asked Bataiye na, just said, I have this project and I want to do this and I want to do that. And then the cool, clear Occam's razor slices through. And suddenly it is made clear what you wanted to do and how you can do it and how you can finish it. And that, being with the NCPA, being with just about everything that counts. The dance woman, sorry, Arundhati. Yeah, it's that life also that I think needs to be written about, and she's never going to do it. So, what some woman is going to have to take up this thing and do it, and that will happen also. I will make sure it happens. I will harass somebody.
I'm going to open this up for questions just because of time. Of course, I don't want to give anybody any time to ask questions. I only want to keep asking my own. I just want to say one thing. I think that one of the things I loved about both the books, and it has something to do with what Jerry just said, that nobody has sat and written about these things. And why not? Somebody does a piddly little thing and they become an influencer, and then all the magazines want to feature them on the cover, but they're not able to grasp the meaning of lives like Shanta's or Dolly's sufficiently. In fact, because the great hallmark of their lives is that they have not been lived by categories. They are very itinerant lives. They're going from place to place. They're going from. One of my favorite lines in Dolly's book, which recurs, were like Richard Attenborough asked me to be the casting director for Gandhi. I didn't exactly know what a casting director is, but when has that ever stopped me? I'm like, chalo, we will just cast Gandhi without exactly knowing. But also the belief that if you work hard enough, but yeah, doing so many different kinds of work. Shanta is teaching tuitions to the Sayyidna's daughter or daughter-in-law. She's not even sure till the end, which it is. and I mean, so I think working in Glaxo, working in Times of India, writing books, translating the memoirs of women herself, there are so many different things. And I feel that is the power of your lives, that they refuse to be boiled down to one meaning. And especially today, when the moment that you do something, you have to immediately be either hashtag badass, hashtag girl boss. I mean, like, that's it. You're the hashtag and you're no more. Girl boss. So that is a nice hashtag, but that's not the hashtag. So I guess, for that reason also, it's amazing to be, because maybe the inability of people to grasp the meaning of these lives is because we don't hear enough about lives in all their complexity, imperfection, oddness, and personalness, which both these books are, and many other books actually. The thing is that once I've gone down the rabbit hole, I want to tell you that there are a few other, like now I just finished Pratima Bedi's. Now I'm reading Kamala Das's, and then Kindle is like more like this. And I'm like, all right, I don't need to worry. There are many seasons, so it's okay. So yeah, but with that, I'd like to open it up for questions. Sorry. Send us it. Okay. People have questions? No, recording.
So this is actually for all three, because I've read M and the Big Home. Things happen in life and they're not so sweet. One either goes the diplomatic route, which is not honest. How does one also be loyal to the people in your life, the people around you, and yet record honestly?
I never had a problem. I wrote the way I felt. It was my outpourings and what I felt. I wasn't concerned about who it hurt and why would it hurt anybody. It was my life. I was talking about myself. And I would say, if you really are honest with yourself, you will go ahead and do that. You know, I mean, otherwise it becomes like what society is. Oh, we can't go there. We can't eat this. We can't wear that. We can't talk like this. You know, then what is there about writing about yourself then? You know, that's very dishonest.
Yeah, yes, I must say that I made one decision right at the start. If I was mentioning negative things about people, I would not name them. And except with my second husband, because it was stupid with husbands. People know who they are. So to say, let me say S. So there, of course, I named them. And I named the reason, I gave an account of the reasons why from my side things didn't work out. Viju, I know, had he been alive, would have taken it very sportingly. He would have said, Hoga, Sukla. Arun took it very badly. And this whole business of being friends and saving precious things for oneself couldn't happen in his case because he just simply stopped talking. Fair enough, but I do think that I've been fair to him. And people have said to me that it's a very balanced view. And some people have said you've been too kind to him. But that's okay. I liked him. And he's given me a lot in life. And I appreciate that and don't want him to, didn't ever want him to feel hurt. But I tried to say to him that what I've written is something that I was the last one to know. The whole of Bombay knew. So I wasn't revealing some great. Anyhow, people do get hurt, even when you don't want to, but honesty does come first.
When I finished M and the Big Whom, I knew that most people in my world would know it was about my family. And most people seem to acknowledge that, they said, it sounds like it's real. There was one person in the world that I didn't want to hurt and for whom I would have not published the book, simply and straightforwardly, because I do not believe any book is worth hurting someone you dearly love. So that's my sister. And I gave her the book and I said, read this. It's about all of us and let me know. And when she finished it, she gave it back to me and said nothing. So I said, sorry, what? And I felt a cold, terrible, because you also had a sense that you'd written something good for a change. I had a cold sense that this might not be happening. And she said, there are too many commas. So I took out a few commas and I sent the book. Now, again, a friend of mine, not a friend, but someone I met, and it became a very spontaneous friendship at that point. Some friend brought an SCMer, Sunita Chitrapu, brought a friend with her And we sat at table and we were chatting, and she was telling me about the blog that she writes about sparrows and about beautiful things that happen on her little patch of window. And I'm thinking, and then suddenly Sunita, in a very direct way, says her brother killed himself. So I turned to her and I said, stop dicking around. Go home and write your book about your brother killing himself. And she said, you think so? I said, yeah, 500 words a day. 6 months from now, show me the manuscript. And we left. 6 months from then, she rang up and said, I have the manuscript. Okay. This is very rare in my life. I didn't have to have this. I just had to pull a plug and it came out. The book is a brilliant soul scream. Okay. But there are many members of the family still alive. Many of those members are not happy with this book, including a 95-year-old father. She asked me, she said, what do I do? I said, you can't have a death watch. You can't be waiting for your father to die and then publish the book. Show it to him. Then I put down the phone and I thought, what the fuck are you doing? Suppose he has a heart attack or something, it'll be blood on your hands. I picked up the phone and said, your father, your decision. She said, not my father, it's my brother. It goes like that. Our story is not our story. Our story is a Venn diagram intersection set of many, many stories that are happening. Okay. So when I say write your story, understand that if you write it with honesty, there will be pain for you and pain for other people. And it is your decision entirely. You are the author. You are the maker of this. And whatever punya comes your way, there's been great punya out of, like, I mean, I've heard many people saying to me, you know, Shanta's book liberated me in a certain way, to think about my body, to look at my body. I've heard people talk about Dolly's book. That will be based on your experience of the world and the people in your world. And often 100 punyas outside may not balance the one weeping face you see in the family. Who said writing was for wimps?
Thanks so much. What a wonderful conversation. I just wanted to say, there's this narrative that independent, strong women are intimidating and therefore are not loved enough, or there's this competition with men in some way. Any comments there? Because I'm touched by what you said, Dolly, about the fact that I never demanded anything. Do you think that's the reason why it was so difficult for people to understand? And have you?
Could have, sorry, it could have been, but I mean, maybe they felt belittled because I wasn't demanding anything. But as I said, the relationship had gone, or the vacuum between the relationships was so great up to that point, that it didn't matter. I mean, there was no coming back after that. And I have never hounded anybody. I've never pursued anybody. I've just let go, cried into my pillow, but I mean, that's about all.
I count myself lucky that both the men I married had nothing to give.
I guess that's what you call a mic drop. So it's a good time to stop. Are there people who are watching online who want to ask a question, since we haven't given them a chance? We'll wait 1 minute for them to quickly type in their questions if they have any. And if we can take one more question in the room. People watching online, if you want to put in your questions, just put them in the YouTube comments. Is there anybody? Yes. Yes. One sec, Mike.
Hello. So my question to both of you, I'm really moved right now and very, very inspired. It's coming from a very personal space. I'm curious to understand, of course, I would love to read your books, but since you're right here, how did you navigate your life and all of the ups and downs and upheavals in the context of your role as a mother? Did you try to protect your kids from what was happening? Did you confide in them and share your life as it was unfolding? Did you consider the age they were at and then took a call? I'm just very curious. I have a 7-year-old, so this is coming from a very personal space.
Poor chap, he had no choice. But I was upfront and honest about everything. And we had each other's back. So, it was never, I don't know what the end result would be, but I'm very proud of what he is today. And he is here today. And so there must be something that I had done right.
Yes, I discussed. First, of course, was smooth sailing till the day that I came away. And when I did, it wasn't actually splitting. It was just coming back to Bombay in order to work. I had packed my clothes, the kids' clothes, and that's it. Always ready to return. And if the children were missing their father. So 2 years down the line, they weren't missing him. And since we were on friendly terms, he kept visiting, they kept visiting him. So that question didn't arise. When I decided to marry the second time, the children were what? 7 and 11 and 12. And I had an open relationship with them. We used to constantly discuss things. And I explained to them that this would happen. I might marry this person whom you call uncle. If you think it's okay. And if you don't, this isn't going to happen. So I think he made a special effort, which was quite unlike him, to and they began to quite like him or accept him as part of their lives. And my son said to him, of course, this doesn't mean that I will not meet Baba and Baba will not meet us. And he said, of course it doesn't. And I said, let me also show you that this man is never, ever going to be Baba. I am Ma, I am Baba, as far as you're concerned. My daughter took a little longer to come around. But then one day she said, okay, Ma, you really want to go marry? My son said, I'm not coming for the wedding. I have a cricket match. So it was sorted out. It wasn't a smooth life for any of us. And I used to continue spending time with my children. And then the door would open a chink and they would say, okay, Ma, duty calls. And out I would go. So I mean, they joked about it, but they also suffered. Yeah.
When you would be writing and you would tell them that right now I'm Shanta Gokhale, so you can't disturb me. I'm not I right now, which I thought was quite a cool thing. Yeah.
Um, the day that my life turned upside down, it happened at about 12 in the afternoon, and I was on the news that night. And in those days, we had everybody watching the news. And the 2 days I read the news, and I'd be weeping and wailing at home. And then I'd go up in front of the camera with all my makeup and do the news. And there were a few friends who helped a great deal. I think, Sunanda, you were there at that. Sudaina, you were there at that time. And, but, you know, and poor Kwasar, for quite a few months, quite a few years, in fact, would be dragged with me to TV Center. And while I was reading the news, he would sit on the platform at the bottom, and he was all of 3 years old at the time. But Doordarshan was very good about it. They allowed me to do that. Nishchit, you would remember that. And but we survived all that. And I hope my son has survived that too, poor guy.
We don't really have much time, but there are a couple of questions. Only
there's
one question online. Okay.
This question is from Uma S. And the question is, if there is one story that women must tell to ensure that future benefits from, what would it be?
I'm going to answer that question. If there isn't one story, there have to be at least 1,000,001 stories of women's lives. Because the thing is, it's not even about whether we love the book or we don't love the book, but that there are renditions and renditions of the way people have lived their lives is what we really need. So I guess that's the answer to the question. Of course, rudely, as the moderator, I have answered. I hope you'll excuse me. Thanks a lot, Dolly, Shanta, and Jerry, for the here today. Thank you to everybody who came. Thank you to SCM for collaborating with Agents of Ishq to do this. Aparna from SCM who helped coordinate. And from AOI, I just want to introduce my colleagues who worked very hard to make sure it all went well. Edgar, who did all the tech. And I think it's like the amazing thing is we learn a lot from people older than us, but we also learn a lot from people younger than us, I think. And that's why intergenerational relationships are so important. And my colleagues are the picture of kindness, perfectionism, commitment, all at the same time. And they show that it's possible to be all those things, right? To be nice and good at your work. Anshuman, who read out Path the Passage. Devasmita, who will actually come up and give small presents from our side to the panelists from the AOS side. And Nandini, who's shooting in France. Yeah. Yeah. And Niranjana and Shikha, who are not here, but help with design and some of the stuff that you've been seeing online. Thanks to everybody. Please go check out on Agents of Ishq, our series, #GrownAssWomen. There are many interviews with many different kinds of women about their lives, and it's great to read, kind of like this evening was. So thank you, everyone. Oh, presents. Quickly. I thought we wanted to give you a present. And then you should write them down.
Thank you so much, Ms. Paramita, Ms. Shanta, Ms. Dolly, and Jerry for being a part of this event. And thank you for being so candid. I'm sure none of us in the audience had one single dull moment. And thank you, audience, for being so patient. Before we proceed, we would, from the side of SCM, like to give a small token of thanks to all the panelists. I request all the alums to join us in the central lawn. Thank you.